Hello. Many people chose not to watch or listen to the inaugural address yesterday, which is fair as I personally found it infuriating. I've also seen some people mixing up the facts, not understanding specific things, and glossing over some parts that irked me. I'd like to share my perspective on this inaugural address as well as summarize what happened for those who did not choose to watch. First, before Trump comes in, we see that on the Democrat side, some of the women are wearing pink blazers, which is their form of protest. As Trump walks in, we see a woman holding a piece of paper in his direction that says this is not normal. And in the next shot, we see her standing, hands clasped, as this paper has been taken from her. As Trump takes his seat, the Republican side of Congress begins chanting USA. He begins the address by stating that America is back, and at this point, we notice that the Republican side gives him repeated standing ovations, while the Democrat side sits down and just stays silent. He continues by saying that they have accomplished more in 4 days than other presidencies have in 4 years, and that they are just getting started. Now, another thing that irked me personally was when Trump said that America was on the verge of a comeback that has never been witnessed before and may never be witnessed again. It felt quite ominous, but it's likely just Trump's ego. And while he's talking about all this, he's just so damn smug, and so is Vance behind him. When he states that they won the popular vote, the Democrat side begins booing. The Republican side counters with their chanting of USA. After a bit more talking and a bit more heckling, whatever guy was on the right side of Trump declares that all members present are to cease any further disruptions and uphold decorum, which neither side was doing, by the way, but the Democrat side is singled out specifically. At this point, Al Green, Texas congressman, stands up and refuses to sit back down, causing him to be escorted out. Trump then goes on for a while about the great things he's supposedly done for our country, speaking only to the Republican half, giving what I interpreted as snarky glances to the Democratic half during choice moments. He also claims that he is the #1 president behind George Washington, which, although seems to be taken as a joke, reeks of blatant narcissism. He also calls Biden the worst president in American history. He also lists out some of the reasons that certain illegal immigrants should not be allowed in the country, one of which is listed as those being released from mental institutions and, quote, insane asylums. Peyton McNabb is introduced, a high school athlete who was apparently physically assaulted by a, quote-unquote, male with a ball, causing a brain injury. He implies that this alleged attacker was a transgender woman who was allowed onto Peyton's sports team, but this is never confirmed. He also makes a comment about kicking men off the girls' team. You notice the subtle condescension there? Men off the girls' team. He goes on to state that a male recently finished a long-distance 5 hours and 14 minutes. He recently finished a long-distance race 5 hours and 14 minutes ahead of a woman, which is simply put a blatant lie, as there is zero document of that ever happening. We see that the Democrat side of Congress has two-sided signs, one saying false, which they hold up whenever Trump makes a false statement, and the other saying, well, it varied between the signs. Some of them said protect veterans, some said save Medicaid, and some said Elon steals. Eventually, they stopped showing the front-facing camera view of the Democratic side so that they can hide these signs. He then talks about how there are apparently people from 100 to 350 years old that are collecting Social Security benefits. I've seen people taking this seriously and taking it to mean that he actually believes that, but that's just not true. He's an idiot, but he's not that much of an idiot. He more likely meant it as a, who are these people who clearly don't exist and where is that money going? Soon after this, he announces the gold card, which is, quote-unquote, like the green card, but better and more sophisticated, which will allow people to buy American citizenship for $5 million. He then claims that he will restore true democracy to America again, which, I shouldn't even have to say it, but this isn't democracy, this is an oligarchy. Then he goes on to state that any federal bureaucrat who resists this change will be removed from office immediately. Following this, he announces reciprocal tariffs, meaning that whatever other countries charge us in tariffs, we will charge them back, and that the tariffs are to go into effect on April 2nd. The CNN coverage that I watched showed one of the women in a pink blazer, an older woman, I never got her name, but she was periodically tearing up during the address, which I don't blame her for, because this shit is scary. Anyway, after this, Trump says that Canada is allowing so much fentanyl into our country, but in reality only about 0.1% of the fentanyl in our country is from Canada. And a big thing that frustrated me is that he spent a good 30 minutes introducing his guests. Some examples of these guests were a kid who survived brain cancer and wanted to be a police officer, a mother and sister of a girl who was raped and murdered by an illegal immigrant, and the mother of a girl who was raped and murdered by an illegal immigrant. What he's doing with these, especially with the kid, is something called pathos. For the uneducated, pathos means to appeal to the public's emotions, essentially playing on their heartstrings. In essence, it's a manipulation tactic, especially with the way it's used here. But then he starts talking about transgender people. This is when he introduces another guest, the mother of a child whose school deceived her by letting her kid use they/them pronouns and go by a different name. What angers me so much about this is that Trump calls this a form of child abuse. He goes to say that wokeness is trouble, wokeness is bad. Okay, apparently America is going to reclaim the Panama Canal, and supposedly an American company has bought the ports around the Panama Canal. I did some research and this is provably true. It seems that BlackRock has bought said ports. He then admits that the canal belongs to Panama, but that they're taking it back. Subsequently, he addresses the people of Greenland, stating that he respects their right to determine their own future. However, he backtracks on this by saying that one way or the other they're gonna get it being Greenland. Trump announces that they have apprehended the quote-unquote top terrorist responsible for the Kabul airport attack, otherwise known as the Abbey Gate bombing, and that he will face the swift sword of American justice. I saw people online taking this literally, thinking that this meant that they were literally going to publicly execute him, but I really don't think we're there yet. But it is possible that he meant an execution, but if that is the case, I highly doubt it will be public. Like I said, I don't think America's even that far gone yet. While he's talking about the war in Ukraine, he calls Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas in a petty display of name-calling. Elizabeth Warren later stated that she wasn't surprised and that his whole speech was a fantasy that Donald Trump tries to construct, which I couldn't agree with more. Trump goes on to confirm that he did receive a letter from President Zelensky, which supposedly said that he was ready to negotiate for peace and that they are thankful for what America has done to protect Ukraine. The way I see it, it was essentially just ass-kissing in an attempt to get on his good side, but I mean, if it works, it works, and Ukraine has been put in a pretty tough spot, so I can't blame them for taking this route. Trump also says that he has received strong signals from Russia that they are ready for peace. I did take note of the fact that he said that they did not confirm or state this, rather that they received strong signals, and he does not elaborate on what that means. Anyway, moving on. Something I forgot to mention before I cover the conclusion in the script, he also called for a mandatory death penalty for anyone who murders a police officer, so you can take that how you will. I'm not really entirely sure how to take it myself. And another thing that made me really upset, he talks about how autism used to be every 1 in 10,000 and now it's 1 in 36. And we have to figure out what's going on here because it certainly couldn't be medical and psychological advancements and wider spread of knowledge. It must be sort of some conspiracy. He ends it by saying that the golden age of America has just begun and now this is over, I'm really damn tired of listening to this whack job. So many blatant lies, hypocrisy, half-truths, logical fallacies, and plenty of ego to back it up. What we're seeing is a man with a god complex. Not a president, but a ruler. Democracy does not exist in America, it is an oligarchy. Although I would also label it an idiocracy. If you take anything out of this video, I don't want it to be that we're doomed. Having that mentality helps no one. But I do want to mention that I'm immensely proud of Al Green for having the courage to stand up and to stand alone. Simultaneously, I'm disappointed in the rest of the Democrats in Congress for letting him stand alone, for staying silent. It's great that women were wearing pink blazers, it's great that the majority of them held those signs, but that's purely symbolic and we're far past the stage where a symbolic protest is viable. I do want to sort of advertise something that I believe is viable, however, and that's the 50-51 movement. This movement plans real protests at various capitals to catalyze real change. I highly suggest you at least look into it. You can find more information at the website 5050.1. Thank you for listening, and I hope that even if you don't agree with me, you'll at the very least consider what I've said and look into it yourself. Have a good day, and remember, America is not lost.